Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Canadian Football Central, CFL content for the fans, by the fans. And we here have, it's funny, you probably noticed Rick missing right now. He has to quickly grab something, and he'll be back. However, we have Winnipeg Jets _Bombers 2024 on Instagram, also known as Aiden, on the show. Aiden, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So we're going to be doing kind of our look into the Bombers this season, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff. And trust me, there's a lot more bad stuff than I wish there would be on this list. And all the injury situations, everything. Although I have to ask Rick, from the outsider perspective, like what's your interpretation on the Bomber season? And you say that you will say this as a Ticats fan. I need to hear this.
Injuries.
Yep.
Zach Collaros has passed his prime because he's just having a shit season. And you can't blame that because Bo's having a better season than him, so I don't want to hear it, even though we're 2-6. I just think injuries is the main one because, I mean, if you guys had Lawler, you guys had Schoen. Yep. And team being old. Yeah. Those are my two things.
No, that's definitely one of the issues. Like, one of the things that has really been a key factor here is that the Bombers the past few years, not going to lie, even in the seasons where they haven't won the Grey Cup and still gotten all the way to the game, in the regular season, the Bombers looked virtually almost unstoppable in the sense of that they were just running over teams like left, right, and center. They would occasionally have an off game and they would lose that one, but it was a level of dominance that is not usually seen very much for years on end. However, this Bomber team probably looks, out of this season and then the last four, I'd say probably the weakest. What would your interpretation on that, Aiden, on maybe why that is?
Well, I think it's just that all dynasties have like a prime, and I just think that a lot of the problems stem from the O-line, and it's just that the inexperience in some and just the age, they just can't keep up with all the D-line that people like added on in the offseason. So I think because in the past years that O-line has given Zach like time to throw downfield and do the explosive plays, and we just don't have that anymore. So
absolutely. I think that's definitely been kind of one of many issues. It's funny. I'm very much a defender of the offensive line, just not necessarily this offensive line, but just of the O-line in general, just because the offensive line is absolutely the first to blame and the last to fame. That's how it always will be, in the sense of when the offensive line is doing perfect, you don't notice them very much. But the thing is that with this offensive line, I found that Patrick Neufeld and Chris Kolinkowski have kind of been the two odd ones out in terms of that. I think that Liam Dobson has done a okay transition into a starting role. I think it's one of those things where he just needs a bit more time before he becomes a really, really strong piece on this offensive line. This offensive line is hurting from the loss of Yoshi Hardrick over to Saskatchewan of all teams. Yikes. And Neufeld and Kolinkowski being at that center and that right guard position, a lot of the times as Zach Collaros has dealt with trouble, it's been in that gap. And unfortunately, one of the things that has been that Collaros has been very fortunate of is having a guy like Hardrick on that tackle spot has at least been able to keep, and I say that guy because it's been multiple different people rotated through the season. They've been able to at least keep the defensive end of whoever they're playing against contained to the inside enough to allow Zach to escape the pocket and scramble. And that's where Zach Collaros has been able to do really, really well in prior seasons. The problem is that Collaros is getting trapped in there. And so even though, like, you know, he has that pocket, he's able to do decent in that pocket, he's a scrambling quarterback and he's able to do those throws on the run. But if there's nowhere to go, then there's nothing he really can do in that regard. Zach Collaros, is he past his prime? Yes. However, the thing is that you can be past your prime and still be very good. I would argue that Bo Levi Mitchell is past his prime. He's not in his prime. However, he is still playing fantastic. I'm not saying that Collaros has played fantastic, but it shows that you can be past your prime and still put up some really good numbers. Now, one of the things here that I think has been really, really critical is injuries, whether that's Kenny Lawler, whether that's Dalton Schoen, whether that's Drew Wolitarski, just guy after guy after guy is going down. It seems like it's one of those things that we have to make signings every week just to fill in roster spots. We signed Lucky Whitehead. It takes him 2 weeks on the practice roster, and I'm like, really? Like, you're telling me he hasn't figured out the Buck Pierce offense? It's like, okay, run on first down, pass on second if it's more than 5 yards, run on second if it's under 5 yards, jet sweep about 4 times a game, and that's all Buck Pierce does. Thankfully, he's finally started to add in a few things. But what would you say, like, in terms of the offensive production here, how would you kind of view that, Aiden?
I think that they were trying to do a lot in the earlier in the season, because Zach didn't really have time in the O-line with Kolonkowski, and Neufeld wasn't really like helping out very much. They tried to do really passing, and Zach just didn't have the time. Absolutely. But then lately, we have seen, especially last game against BC when Neufeld was out, that we can really mix in a lot. And I think with Buck Pierce having that one-sided mindset in the earlier in the season, it really gave defensive coordinators just like, okay, let's just go attack Zach as much as we can, and then that will really help. Then you saw that he wasn't dealing with it well because he just couldn't, because that's not what he's done over the past year. Yeah. But then last game, I think, was probably the best game of the season. You just saw the different Bombers team.
We're looking at a Bombers offense that finally not only was able to get the passing game going, but was actually able to get something out of it, in the sense of that they were able to grab themselves a touchdown. Lucky Whitehead getting that touchdown, which was just, that felt all so good, seeing Whitehead of all of our receivers to be the one to grab it. That was just fantastic. However, I gotta say, I definitely agree that Calero's not having as much time, and his decision making in that it has been hindered, in the sense of that if we look at even the game against Saskatchewan, that turnover that he throws, that is a combination of two things. That is receivers not being able to not running their routes properly, not being able to get open. But I think the other issue with that is that Zach Collaros has been a quarterback that's been able to take situations where offense would seemingly be impossible and make that into offense. If you look at a lot of the passes for Dalton Schoen and Kenny Lawler in prior seasons, and even Greg Ellingson when he was here, it was seemingly impossible situations where the ball found its way through and the receiver found a way to make the grab. And so now that the receivers aren't getting their hands and they're not able to get that grab, or sometimes getting their hands in there and dropping it, it's been a bit more difficult for Zach to figure out exactly where to put that. And it sometimes ended up with Zach Collaros forcing plays where he probably should have just thrown it away. That pick that he throws in that game against Saskatchewan, he probably needs to throw that ball away. But instead he throws it into double coverage, and that's when we end up with the pick six. And so, and it's decisions like those that can change games. Like the Bombers have played badly, but a lot of their losses, like half their losses, have just been just because the other team's been better. We've played decent, and that's that. But a lot of times the Bombers have shot themselves in the foot. The amount of times that they got into the red zone and threw a pick and not even put up a field goal or nothing. It feels like it's happened all too like it's just, like this is just a repeat thing that we have learned to accept, which I hate that. We can't learn to accept that, but I don't know, Rick, does what I'm saying make sense to you? Like is that kind of resonate, or what's kind of your 2 cents on this whole situation?
My whole thing is everything starts with the quarterback, and some games, Zach Claris would have a good game, then he wouldn't have a good game, then he gets injured, then you bring Strevler in, and then the players are used to one quarterback, and then you have another quarterback come in, and it's just like,
and a quarterback that's used to certain receivers, and then he comes back out there and they're all injured, and it's new guys.
Well, yeah, that too. But
man,
then it's just like everyone's just picking your defense apart left, right, and center. Luckily, our teams haven't played each other yet.
I was about to say, thankfully, it looks like on the defensive side of things, that has changed in the sense of that in the last 3 games, the Bombers have not given up more than 20 points in any of them. With last game, the Bombers getting the first I was about to say touchdown, the first shutout of the CFL season, not a single point given up against what was considered, some people have them at number one, some people don't, but a top two, top three team in the league regardless. And like, man, this is just, it was everything that Winnipeg needed. And I just, like, it's funny because I think, Rick, you remember I was having questions about Jordan Young, about our new defensive coordinator, and how I was not sure about him because I was not seeing results early in the season. However, what I did say, and I think that this is becoming all the more, I'd say, clear now, was that as much as Jordan Young, I didn't think was performing well early in the season, no one was performing well earlier in the season. It's like no one was doing well, so it's hard to tell if he's being bad because everyone's being bad, or if because everyone's being good and he's a hindrance. And now that the team is starting to finally turn the corner a little bit, hopefully that stays, hopefully, it's looking like Jordan Young is not the issue here. A lot of people I've heard, there's been a lot of slander towards, or I shouldn't say slander. There's been a lot of criticism towards O'Shea. Slander immediately, is like kind of dismissing it. I don't want to immediately dismiss it. However, I'm going to say two things. Number one, Mike O'Shea is untouchable in the sense of there's no way the Bombers do anything in regards to getting rid of Mike O'Shea. That guy's name is going to be on the Ring of Honor up in Winnipeg, right at Princess Auto Stadium, IG Field, whatever the hell you want to call it, the second his career is done. I still hate that name. Princess Auto Stadium's a dumb name. I'm sorry.
The other thing that I've noticed is
Yep.
beginning of the half, it was all offense.
Yeah.
Now it's slowly going into all defense
And kicking
and
games.
kicking.
Holy shit. It's funny. I literally said when I watched that last game, like, I don't know what you thought, Aiden, when I watched that last game, I was like, man, this game is great if you're a Bomber fan. If you're a fan of football, if you're a fan of BC, if you're a fan of anyone else, this game sucks. This game's boring. This is a boring-ass football.
Listen, nothing's as boring as that Ottawa game that we watched a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, my gosh.
That's snooze fest.
Holy shit. I didn't even need melatonin. That thing was putting me right to sleep. Like, that was ridiculous. My goodness.
Okay.
Like,
So, Carter, I have a question for you.
yeah?
So, I already know who my three players are, but who would you say is the stock up and the stock down for the season?
So, like when you say stock up, you mean like impressed and necessary?
Okay, I was gonna say impressed and disappointment. I was trying to change the wording that I had.
Okay.
So
well,
while you think of yours, I will give mine. So, I would say Wilson and Castillo are my stock ups.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Claris is a stock down because of the touchdown interception ratio.
Fair enough. We got to get Aiden in on this afterwards. So I'm curious to see what he's got.
Big Hill's not doing as well as I thought he would this year.
Okay.
But those are my players that I
So who I got, I'm going to give you two of each, okay? So on the stock up, Ontario Wilson can't not be on there. Like, I'm sorry. Like, he absolutely has to be on there. He has had a great job. Like, he's been fantastic. And it's one of those things where if the Bombers didn't start playing as bad as they did and didn't start having all the injury problems, we might not have realized what a diamond in the rough we really had with Ontario Wilson. So if there's anything good to come out of all this mess, maybe it's that. So there's Ontario Wilson on the positive side of things. I think another one on the positive side of things was a player that we knew was really good last season, but I really think is starting to flourish and very much in the last few games is Terrell Ford. Defensively, with an interception in the last game the Bombers played and the game before that, and overall his coverage has been relatively good and is really starting to cement himself as a core part of this defense in a bigger position than I thought he would. I think Evan Holm, I thought was going to really, really explode this year. It's not like he's played bad. He's actually played quite good. It's just that I don't think that he has assumed the cemented number one role that I necessarily thought, but there's still half a season left. On the negative side of things, I'm actually not going to put Caleros, believe it or not, which might seem crazy. And it's because I think as much as Caleros has had misjudgments, The thing is that I think if you get Lawler back in the mix, if you get Schoen back in the mix, if we're talking about Calero's playing with what he knows, and with these guys actually holding on to the ball, I don't necessarily think we see the same scenario that we have now. I think Calero's is less important in the equation of why the Bombers are doing bad than people think. Who needs to go in that list? Nick Dembski absolutely needs to go in that list. I was calling for him to be benched after that game in Toronto. And you know what? I'm not going to lie. Even though he had a good game this last game, I still don't think I was wrong with it. I don't think that would have been the wrong call. I would have completely understand. I understand why they didn't bench him, because the fact of the matter is that we had so many injuries on receiver. It's kind of hard to bench someone in that regard. But it's got to be Nick Dembski, and then on the other side of things, because then our D line is being just injured halfway to hell. I'm gonna say Colin Kowski, and the reason I'm saying Colin Kowski is because I think with Neufeld, I think some of his decline was a little bit predictable, based on his performance on the latter half of last season, based on his age, all that sort of stuff. I think Colin Kowski, I was really hoping would cement himself even more so into that role as that number one center. Ever since that we had lost Michael Couture to BC. But it hasn't been working the best. So I'm going to say Chris Kolinkowski for that. So who would you say is your two bounce up and two bounce down there, Aiden?
Well, it's probably going to be very similar to yours, but Ontario Wilson, I don't know how you can't. We wouldn't have even seen him if there was no injuries, and he's made the most out of what the opportunity has given.
Absolutely.
He has been
no question.
Probably our number one receiver this year.
Yeah.
And for someone in their first year in the league, that's just incredible.
Yeah.
What he's done. Another player, and he just started, so I don't know how it's going to work out, but I really liked Devin Adams on our D line.
I absolutely agree.
He was just that. He got through that O-line so easily, and he was just always such a factor. And I really loved watching him, and I think that can be a very exciting addition to that D-line if he stays healthy.
100%. I also think he's done very, very well on special teams too, in the roles that they've given him, and that's one of the things that the Bombers have been doing really, really well as of recent. I mean, we talk about Toronto. Janarian Grant had nothing. Janarian Grant for 4 straight weeks had gotten some sort of return touchdown. I don't even think he got 50. I don't even think he got 20 yards. When it was one of those things where he was really not getting much. When I say 20 yards, I don't mean total. I mean on just one singular drive, which for Janarian Grant is pretty standard to at least get one of those a game. But literally the second he had that ball, he was just going nowhere with Winnipeg's coverage downfield, which again has been, in a sea of not playing well, has been a shining light. And I hope to see that continue as the team hopefully, I pray to God, gets better. But who would you say are maybe on the downer side of things now?
Well, Nick Dembski. It's so horrible. I can't. I wouldn't trust throwing him at all. Every time, he did have a good game or an okay game Thursday.
I love the way he played in that game. The second he caught the ball, it was. Yeah. He just both hands. Literally, he catches a 30-yard pass, and normally I'd be jumping out of my seat excitement, and I'm literally sitting there watching him run down the field and actually going towards getting us points, and I'm sitting there, I'm oh my goodness! This man is scarred.
He was I cannot mess up again.
I was did this man see my review? I literally suggested in the review that he get both hands on it, because I said anytime Nick Dembski's making a catch, he's getting at least 10 yards before that, because we never throw under 10 yards to Dembski unless he's running a Buck Pierce jet sweep. That's the only time that he may not have the first down. So he has the first down, so you don't have to, there's less of an incentive to get, obviously you want to get more yards whenever you can, but it's one of those things, it's not going to be the end of the world. We're going to get another chance. So I love that Nick Dembski has taken all the criticism to heart and made the most of it, at least. So, hopefully that continues.
Carter, I have a question for you.
We still have one more, though. He said Dembski, can we do that afterwards? Yeah. I was just kind of piggybacking off of what he said.
Ooh, another one. Okay, kicking's a really hard part of the game, but Jamison Sheehan has not been great. He hasn't been bad. But sometimes,
Yeah.
even on Thursday, the way he just sometimes really misses the kicks, and I don't.
And you know why this sucks?
Field position has been it's been hard for our defense this
We've
year.
had to use him a lot more than I'd like.
I don't know.
as a punter. Although the thing I will say interesting about Sheehan is that Sheehan at the start of this season, I thought that Sheehan actually looked pretty strong, and that he had performed really well. However, later into the season, like again, Sheehan is literally being the mere reflection of the Bombers, but the Bombers are playing well. Sheehan is seemingly just making these not great punts at all. I mean, last game was a very rough game. It was definitely the worst game of the season for Sheehan. But however, like second game of the year, you look at those punts, they were going like long down the field, right near the sidelines. They would hit in and it would bounce out at the proper time, or sometimes it wouldn't bounce out of bounds and it would force the other team to have to really make a play on a ball that's just really not good for them. So Sheehan is, in my opinion, is being probably the most hot cold in the sense of that Sheehan almost looks like a player that like when he has like kind of like Connor Hellebuck syndrome in the sense of that when he's getting tons of shots, when he's on the field a lot and he's punting all the time, just like when Hellebuck's making a lot of saves, that's when he's at his best. However, when he's only used sparingly, again, we want to use him sparingly because if we're punting all the time, then we're not scoring points. But when he's used sparingly, that's when he's at his weakest. And so I think that has definitely been a more recent player who's been kind of fallen off. So I agree with you there. Is there anything else you had to do on it? I do know that Rick also wanted to get in on all this stuff.
No, I just wanted to ask you.
Yep.
If you take all of the drops from Dembski this year,
yep.
And who was it on BC that did that ridiculous showboat last year?
Dominic Grimes.
Okay, what would you say was worse if all of the drops that Dembski had this year, or if that was Dembski in Dominic Grimes' shoes and that happened to him?
It's got to be Dembski because there's multiple games.
No. What I'm saying is, are you saying that his drops are the worst, or if that was Dembski in Grimes' shoes?
Like, if Dembski was in Grimes' shoes, then what?
Shoes. And that happened and he dropped the ball like Grimes did. Would you say the drops are worse than what Grimes did?
Because you're talking about Dominic Grimes when he should have went down so they could have kicked the field goal, but he thought he could get the touchdown, so he kept going. Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna say that probably because it's one of those things you're comparing multiple. Are you only referring to one drop by Dembski, or are you referring to all of them cumulatively?
I'm just saying
one
his
or all of them?
I'm just saying his inconsistency to hold on to a ball.
Well, I would probably say the worst one is being the inconsistency because it affects multiple games. It's not just one game.
True.
That's if you understand where I'm coming from here, in the sense of that Dominic Grimes made a critical mistake that hurt them in that one game. To be fair, BC, you went to overtime. You still lost in overtime. You had another chance to win that game. You didn't. You failed. However, when it came to Dembski, this happened on multiple occasions, and one of them was against Saskatchewan. So I'm gonna be naturally more pissed off because I hate losing to Saskatchewan. I
mean, it's only one game.
4 Grey Cups in 100 years. That's fine. They'll deal with it. Anyways, I'm sorry. I like mentioning that, but overall, I think at this point, the Bombers' performance up to now, if I'm giving them a grade. Is it F?
Really? You're going that bad?
I don't think it's F. I don't think it's F. I don't think it's F because I don't think it's F. I was going to
say at least a C.
I'm going to say C minus because the thing is that with the Bombers, I can't go F because they're finally starting to get some stuff together. And with injuries, that is a reason, not the only reason. You can't have injuries be the whole reason that you're not winning because every team's going to get injuries every season. That's just that is football. But with everything that's still been there, with Dembski still there, with Wolotarski still there, with an offensive line that hasn't had a ton of changes in the sense of that Liam Dobson replaces Jeff Gray. I don't think that's a downgrade. I'm sorry. Like Dobson has taken a few penalties. However, the amount of procedure penalties that Jeff Gray was responsible for, I just about lost my mind. Like, I'm out there and literally, like, I see the ref go like this, and I'm like it's Gray, you know, like I'm putting my money on it right now. You know, I would have made so much money if I bet every time we got a procedure on Jeff Gray. Would have made just tons of cash. But
wasn't there a game where you guys had like a penalty on every one of your offensive linemen?
No, so this season we almost did. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of them this year that got procedure penalties, and it was all different linemen. And so my brother Zach had basically said that if we had had 1 to 2 more idiots, we would have had a full house of them in front of Zach Caleros. And so, and so that's been frustrating, but I don't think that necessarily was a downgrade. On the other hand, just Neufeld and Kolinkowski have both regressed, and then the loss of Hardrick is sorely missed. But if we're looking at where they're moving forward, I want to actually hold on a second. Like let's go a little bit into injuries. Rick, do you have the list up, or because you're able to come up with
injuries this week?
Like injuries as of right now, what the current injury status is of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I just gotta go to.
You can talk about that, and I kind of want to get into this next few set of games. Okay, so this right now is week 10, and so currently there is a game on Sunday the 18th on week 11. Winnipeg plays BC in BC. Very, very important thing to note about this game is that this is the earliest Vernon Adams Jr. could possibly return. He will not be playing on Sunday the 11th against Edmonton. It has been said that he could return as early as the 18th in terms of playing games. So that one is very much a maybe in terms of if we're seeing Vernon Adams Jr., if we're seeing Jake Dolegala from BC. So some uncertainty there. Definitely going to be really important for Buck Pierce and Winnipeg to watch some film on Jake Dolegala in his game against Edmonton coming up, as well as some prior film and film on the game they played against BC from when they did. On Friday, August 23rd, they play at home against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and then the following week and the following week after that are Labor Day and the Banjo Bowl. So overall, Aiden, how would you say maybe you feel about our matchups there with all the circumstances in there? Against BC, Hamilton, and then Saskatchewan twice.
I think that these 4 weeks will show if the Bombers can actually compete this year or not. I think they can't come at a better time because with getting Kenny Lawler back and finally starting to find our groove, I think this is the time, and we can catch up with so much ground with this West. I guess everyone just decided to start losing, which is good for us, I guess. But
unfortunately Calgary won, but we saw BC and Saskatchewan lose this prior week. So.
Game, oh my god.
Well, we got the tiebreaker on them. So
I think we have a chance. We have a really good chance. I think BC, even at home, if Fernandes is even back, we had a great game plan for him on Thursday, and I think with Saskatchewan, I don't know how Trevor Harris is going to be. He's probably going to be back by then.
That's a difficult one.
It's going to be interesting to
However,
see.
As much as Trevor Harris might be back, I think more importantly, I have to imagine either Schoen or Lawler is back by that point. At least one of them.
I think Lawler's going to be back.
I think Lawler's probably going to be back too. I agree with you. Now, one of the things I've always said is that Labor Day and Banjo Bowl are a completely different breed of game for Winnipeg, in the sense of we could be looking at a Winnipeg team that's terrible, and then they really perform in either Labor Day or the Banjo Bowl, or both. We could be looking at a Winnipeg team that's awesome, and they just fall apart. That is just kind of how it is. It is a completely different kind of game, and that same rule applies to Saskatchewan, because it's just different. That's how it is, and I'm sure that's probably how it is out in Labor Day in Hamilton, Toronto. Am I right, Rick? That Labor Day is just a completely different breed of a game. That once it comes to Labor Day, it's anyone's game.
Like for us, we could have the most shittiest season ever. We win Labor Day, We're fine with that. We can have the worst season. We don't even.
There you go. At least you beat Toronto. Yeah. But I think a crucial thing here is we're looking at Winnipeg playing BC, Hamilton, Saskatchewan. So we are looking at Winnipeg playing 3 West teams in the next 4 matchups, and both of those matchups, because they're 2 teams, are right now at the top of the West. If Winnipeg can't get wins against BC or Saskatchewan, and thankfully they got at least one against BC, then they can't compete. Because the thing is that Winnipeg, is there a chance that Winnipeg could do the crossover? I'm going to say no, actually. Because I know Rick, for fun's sake, in our preview, was talking about that. But because we have the tiebreaker with Calgary, if there's any situation where there's a crossover from the West to the East, I think Calgary's taking it. Because we have the tiebreaker. At that point, they would drop to 4th. They would move across. Now, the thing is, though, is that most likely Winnipeg needs to learn how to compete within the West. If we want to win the West, we have to win against the West. We have to be able to beat BC. We have to be able to beat Saskatchewan. We did it against BC once. Want to see it again. Saskatchewan, we already lost to them once. We got to win at least one of those 2 damn games. I am going to be driving to Labor Day to see that game. I will be at the Banjo Bowl. I'll be at both of those games. They better get at least one of them, or I swear to God. I just might lose my mind.
Okay, so to answer your question.
About injuries, yeah.
You guys have 14 players on your injured list. Carter, just think. You guys have 13 people. One's on a 6 game. The good thing is...
only one's on the 6 game?
Oh, sorry. One's on the 1 game. The rest are on the 6 game. Dalton Schoen's 6 game mark is this week. Or when you guys play BC next.
I see.
That is his 6 game mark.
So at that point, that's when he gets the reassessment, and hopefully he gets moved to the standard injury list and is back shortly. It all depends. But he could be extended.
This actually, technically no, because this bye week is classified as his 6th week.
Okay, so he's probably going to have some sort of extension. I hope that it's not another 6 game, because that just sucks. But like if we're thinking here, like looking into it, with the way the Bombers are now, and with the way that they've performed up until this point, and with the way they look like they're turning around, and there are these questions about receivers, about this or that, like where are we thinking that these Bombers kind of maybe end up in the standings? I'm not going to say the league standings. I'm going to say in the West, and I'm going to start here with Aiden, I think.
I do believe they can finish 3rd. I don't see them passing Saskatchewan and BC just because with the injuries, but I do think we do make the playoffs just because of that tiebreaker at Calgary. I think we'll probably end the same record as them.
You think
that's what I'm seeing?
Okay. So here's the thing: if we end with the same record as Calgary, does the East have a situation where Calgary crosses over? And this would, keep in mind, this would require 2 things. This would require Toronto falling behind Calgary, and Hamilton not being able to recover from the fall that they've had, and Edmonton I was going to say continuing to play like shit, but they won last game, so it's kind of difficult. But Edmonton continuing to stay at the bottom of the West.
So here's my question for that. Is you said same record. What is that record?
What is that record?
Yeah.
I don't even know. It's one of those things I can't remember exactly. Like I can't give a prediction on that. I just have no idea.
Well, because they played 9 games. Mm-hmm. Even if they go 6-3, that means that they finish 9-9. Mm-hmm. If they go 6-3 in the next 9 games,
it could be that. That's possible.
I mean, even if you guys went 500, you guys would finish 8-11.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's such a I don't know if they make playoffs spot when it comes to the CFL, and so I don't know. I think this team can make the playoffs. I agree with you there, Aiden. I agree also with you that if we're making the playoffs, we're probably making it in that 3rd spot. I don't see us passing Saskatchewan or BC. Who of those 2 wins the West? I have no idea. Probably BC, but Could be either. But we probably are going into the playoffs with no home field advantage, most likely. And at that point, it's one of those things. There will be a lot of people that will count us out. But, I mean, if we look at that team in 2019, no home field advantage anywhere in sight. Got it done and won the Grey Cup that year. I'm sure Rick remembers. Isn't that right?
Yeah. I'm curious, Carter, do you remember when the last time you guys missed the playoffs was?
It was a while ago. Do you have the stats here? If you got the stats.
That's what I'm looking at.
I don't even know. It's
been a while. I found it.
I kind of also got into football a little later, so.
The last time you guys missed the playoffs, and we're talking by a merely 4 points, is 2015.
Pressure's on Winnipeg.
That's when Edmonton and Calgary finished both 14-4. BC made the playoffs 7-11, and you guys finished 5-13.
Huh. So again, pressure's on. Better not. So that would have been their third year, I think, playing at IG Field. So we're talking a while ago. So yeah, they better not. They better not. Otherwise, there probably is a very angry video coming out from the Nolan Hockey Podcast. I'm telling you that right now. I think that pretty much covers everything I had that I was hoping to talk about with Winnipeg. Rick, is there anything you got?
Nothing I got.
Aiden, is there any grievances you want to air out? Is there anything that you want to chat about here on the
I think that a lot of Winnipeg fans need to just chill just a little bit.
Agreed.
Because they expect so much great things, and we had that for so long.
We've been spoiled.
At this point, it's greedy. It's getting greedy.
Yeah.
I think we didn't expect all the injuries, but we expected this team to not be as dominant as years past. And I think just to expect
we expect
that from
greatness,
them,
my friends. We expect the greatness.
It's unrealistic to believe that they could keep that up forever. And I think a lot of Bomber fans have just gotten so used to winning that a lot of them stop supporting, and that's not what we need to do right now. So
I mean, I could say the same thing about our fans.
Yeah.
First, they blame it on Bo. Well, it's not friggin' Bo, because Bo's not first in the league in yards and passing touchdowns if it's not Bo. It's just everyone needs to take a step back, take a chill pill, and our season does not begin until after Labor Day.
At the end of the day, it's one of those things we have to realize, no matter how happy, no matter how sad, no matter how mad we are as fans, none of that really matters in terms of controlling the on-field product. It's in their hands, so all I do is hope that Coach O'Shea brings us back to where we belong, Rick, where we belong. We own the West, my friend. Own it!
Not the Grey Cup, that's for sure.
Dynasty's not dead, baby. So I think that's all. I think that's pretty much all we got to go through. Thank you so much to Aiden for coming on here. I'm going to have the link to his Instagram account here in the description below. He has all sorts of Jets coverage for the NHL, Bomber coverage for the CFL. He will even cover it throughout the game. He'll be posted on his story. All that wonderful stuff. It is Winnipeg Jets _Bombers 2024. Again, link to that account in the description below. Make sure to check him out. Make sure to give him a follow. Message him saying that, you know, that the Bombers need to get their head out of their ass. Do that, because that's great. Make sure that you leave a like on the video, share it around, leave a subscribe, because subscribing helps. Hit the little notification bell as well, because I asked nicely, and I will ask less nicely next time.
Carter, one last question. This is coming out tomorrow, correct, for our viewers?
I think so. That should be the 8th,
okay.
I think, yeah.
Okay, just so that I can have it up on Spotify.
Perfect. You can check that out there, too. And if you do, please give us 5 stars. Helps out. We have 2 5-star reviews right now. I would love 3. And so if you could be the 3rd one, I would thank you dearly. So, without further ado, peace, love, and positivity, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll see you guys next time.